Pomej. Holiday of Terror. Sherlock Holmes, the Galactic Cases. Episode 11. Based on the characters by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. A Go Audio production. Talking to a teenager is like pulling teeth, Captain Decker explained. One gets contemptuous looks, stupid answers, and obscene gestures. Do you recall your own teenage years in that regard, sir? Tornot ventured to ask with a grin. No suggestive insinuations, warned Decker. Otherwise, I shall have to find myself another first officer. Both were in the fitness centre of the Ultimo One, where Sherlock Holmes and Dr Watson were also working on their physical fitness. All wore comfortable red tracksuits with the emblem of the Galactic Union and were jogging casually on treadmills next to each other. Dr Watson, already somewhat out of breath, stepped off his machine and asked curiously, "Are you perhaps talking about the young people who came aboard recently?" "Young people?" repeated Tornot, wrinkling his nose. "I call them the organ pipes, and we must pack them off to summer camp. The tallest one is called Rocky and is 17. His brother Sem is 16, and the girl named Asunta is only 14. Small, but quite something." "And they are a true plague," Decker chimed in. "If their fathers weren't ministers of the Union, we wouldn't have to put up with them. Oh dear, speak of the devil." Just then, the three aforementioned teenagers entered the fitness room and sauntered towards Decker. The boys wore burgundy overalls with broad black belts, and the girl wore a blue and green checked miniskirt and a semi-transparent yellow blouse that barely concealed her still underdeveloped secondary sexual characteristics. "Ah, there are the next generation of the Galactic Union," the doctor began a conversation with them. "Are you looking forward to the holidays?" Rocky pulled a face. "Oi, mate, don't act so clueless. We're being sent off to a reform camp for troubled youth. The old folks think they can soften us up there." "But the old codgers have got it all wrong," announced Sem in a falsetto voice. "No one can break us down." "No, really not," affirmed Asunta, whilst running her fingers through the long, curled portion of her hair in an affected gesture. "What a lovely asymmetrical hairstyle you have, Miss Asunta," Holmes praised her styling. "Cut with such precision." Haughtily, the girl turned towards him and chirped, "No, it wasn't cut. Just imagine, I fell down the stairs and part of my hairstyle broke off." He, all three giggled in unison. He, to be honest," Rocky explained. "Our dear Assie, being the finance minister's daughter, drew the resentment of her classmates who blamed her because her old man was squeezing too much dosh out of their fathers. He. "What?" exclaimed Dr Watson in horror. "They simply cut off part of her beautiful black mane?" "Yes," Assie admitted. "But in return I immediately poked out one of the culprit's eyes with the scissors." He, laughed Sem. "The doll is good. But our chief quack doctor fitted him with an animal's eye, much prettier and above all with a much sharper look. Lucky for him, he. A pig's eye suits him better anyway. He. After they had finished amusing themselves, the three teenagers left the room contentedly. "Well?" inquired Decker. "Was I right? They are one of the 7 biblical plagues in human form, and I am already relieved knowing we shall deposit them on Kepler 42F. By the way, I would like to request, my dear Mr. Holmes, that you look after these unruly rascals and protect them together with Dr. Watson." "What exactly should we protect them from?" Holmes inquired. "Above all from themselves," barked the captain irritably. "Teenagers are risk-seeking, self-harming and moreover suicidal due to their profound world-weariness." "Well, these adolescents did not appear that way to me," observed Dr. Watson. "You have only seen one mood of the rebellious trio," reminded the first officer. These rascals can also become whiny and kamikaze-like, believe me. During puberty, the brain of such unfinished organisms is one big construction site and incapable of adult logic. They can harm themselves and others, especially when there are three of them and they conspire against authority. Until now, we have rarely dealt with such unfinished organisms, as you prefer to call them, Mr. Tornot, Holmes noted. But we shall do our utmost to ensure the parents of these youngsters have no cause for complaint. Are there any dangers on Kepler 42f, Mr. Decker? No. The planet orbits a red dwarf in the constellation Cygnus, 130 light-years from Earth, and is only as large as our Mars. The atmosphere is breathable, and the climate is mildly autumnal. As for animals, there are only knee-high rodents, all of which are herbivores. I see the greatest danger in the present underage holiday guests. But it is still a penal camp, the doctor recalled. Surely there must be some guards watching. Nonsense, Tornot dismissed with contempt. The devilish trio constantly mocks adults. It's a simple holiday camp with a few supervisors whom I deeply pity for their work. I wouldn't last 2 weeks with those 3 diabolical brats, let alone if more of their kind were loitering about. Very well, we know what awaits us now and feel prepared, Holmes claimed optimistically, and nodded to Dr. Watson, who did not seem quite so certain about the matter. The teenagers enjoyed themselves for the remainder of the journey aboard by spending most of their time splashing about in the swimming pool or taking simulated flights to inhospitable planets. Decker and Tornot avoided contact with them as much as possible, and Holmes, whom the three now called only Homie, occasionally tried to waste his wit on them. Dr. Watson, whom they had christened Whiskers, offered them a thorough examination, which all 3 adolescents declined. Phew! Finally, Kepler 42f came into view of the Ultimo 1, and Decker rubbed his hands together with delight. Blimey, I never would have thought how long a shortcut through a quantum tunnel could feel when you've got the plague on board. At least we'll be rid of our 3 troublemakers for 2 weeks. Yes, but I'm already dreading the return journey, Tornot feared. I'll inform Holmes and Dr. Watson that they should make their way to the space glider. Rocky, Sem and Asunta were already seated in the comfortable aircraft. The spoilt teenagers did not have to glide down to the surface in a measly shuttle, but rather had their father's private flyer delivered on board. When Holmes and Dr. Watson boarded in their old-fashioned suits and took their seats behind them in the cockpit, they received only disdainful looks from the 3 young people who had all thrown on shiny golden overalls. "Fasten your seatbelts and hold tight," commanded Rocky. "Captain Rocky will get you safely to the Keplerian fuck planet Tee-hee." Might we perhaps agree to employ a somewhat more civilized language? Dr. Watson attempted to positively influence the teenagers. "Tee-hee, did you hear what the old moustache in the back seat is mumbling about?" Asunta mocked him. All 3 were virtually enthroned before a seemingly rather confusing instrument panel. Rocky held 2 control sticks in his hands and awaited his turn. "Come on, Decker, get to it. We want to get out of your contraption." Over the intercom, they received clearance for takeoff after the hatch of the Ultimo 1 had opened. "And off we go to hell, whee!" Sem called out gleefully. "Finally some action, Tee-hee-hey," giggled Asunta whilst clapping her hands. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson sat motionless behind them. After only a few minutes, a siren sounded and a cool female voice issued a warning. "Attention! Entry angle too steep." "What do you mean too steep, you synthetic nymph?" Rocky grumbled whilst yanking his control sticks about wildly. "I recommend correcting the vertical axis by 9 degrees and the lateral axis by 7 degrees, the voice calmly announced. "Otherwise, there will be burn damage to the underside." "Bloody hell!" Rocky appeared to be struggling with the space glider's controls. "It worked perfectly fine in the simulator." The space glider, which was as large as an antique Learjet, tilted dangerously sideways and vibrated most unpleasantly, which now also awkwardly affected the passengers, who did not appreciate this unwanted massage function at the wrong place at the wrong time at all. Moreover, a burning smell became noticeable in the cockpit. "Turn on the autopilot, Rocky," Asunta screeched whilst clinging to her seat. "Quickly!" "Shut your mouth, Assie!" she snapped at Rocky, whose hands were trembling like aspen leaves on the control sticks. "Turn it on, brother," Sem implored him. "It's not working, bloody hell!" Rocky's voice nearly cracked. "I can't counteract in this blasted atmosphere. It must be far too dense." "If this is another one of your jests," grumbled Dr. Watson, who until now had trusted Rocky's technical abilities and thought this was a prank by those young whippersnappers to frighten him and Holmes. "This is deadly serious, old chap. I can't engage the autopilot," Rocky whimpered. The female voice grew more urgent. "Autopilot recommended, otherwise crash in T-2 minutes." "Bloody hell!" squeaked Asunta, as a tear already trickled from the corner of her eye. Sherlock Holmes, who, being British and reserved as he was, did not show the slightest fear of a potential crash, leaned forward and stretched out his right hand towards the dashboard, where he pressed a flashing red button, whereupon the wailing of the sirens died down. "Autopilot engaged!" boomed a male voice, and the space glider immediately stabilised itself and steered safely towards the holiday camp's landing strip. "Blimey," said Rocky, peering over his shoulder at Sherlock Holmes. "How did you know which button to press, Gov?" "Following logic, I assumed it had to be a signal red one flashing vigorously," countered Holmes, whilst raising his right eyebrow. "Well, even a blind chicken finds a grain of corn sometimes," teased Asunta, who had quickly recovered from her fright. After disembarking, Dr. Watson noticed the completely scorched underside of the glider. "I dare say there will be a rather serious conversation between father and son. Wouldn't you agree, Rocky?" I haven't the foggiest what you mean, old chap," he played the innocent lamb. "Besides, the old man's got so much on his plate that he can't possibly check the glider or the damage report." "Which ministry does he hold?" Holmes wanted to know. "The Ministry of Defence and Acquisition of Uninhabited Planets," Sem boasted proudly. "He has never made a mistake thus far." "Well, one can hardly say the same about his offspring," muttered Dr. Watson. "Perhaps the ministers have merely propagated their private misery." "We don't want to unnecessarily provoke these unfinished organisms, my dear friend," Holmes whispered back, and then turned to the youngsters. "Don't you have any luggage?" "Good Lord," sighed Sem, rolling his eyes. "For a participation fee of 1 million Bitcoin, everything really must be included. Look at the surroundings. There are pumpkins growing there. We'll surely be served those for grub today." "I hate vegetables," Sem hissed. "Then we'll shove it up the supervisor's arse," Rocky screeched. "Oh, look, here comes one rushing over." In a black convertible with a stainless steel robot at the wheel, a man in an indigo blue suit with a green pocket square drove towards them. The car braked just in front of them. The man stepped out and spread his arms as if he wanted to embrace them all at once. "Welcome to Hazard's End," he boomed with a broad smile. "Your distinguished visit is an immeasurable honour to me. I am Director Oosterlund, and I was already worried about your fiery descent." Yes, Rocky nodded. "Most people worry about too many things, none of which ever come true. My concern is, do our rooms have a computer with female genitalia?" Sam belched loudly, and Asunta giggled foolishly alongside him. Smiling imperturbably, the director unleashed a torrent of words upon his new guests. "No, I have a better idea. My dear young people can immediately expend your excess energy in an adventure game. Here you see a pumpkin field with ripe fruit where you can carry out a so-called vegetable massacre. You'll receive becoming spacesuits and should trample as many ripe pumpkins as possible. But, attention, Not all squashers are real. Some are made of hard plastic and emit intense cries of pain when you kick them. I know what young people enjoy. The plastic squashers only earn you half points. The winner is, naturally, whoever accumulates the most points. My robot will take you in the open sports car to the changing room with the suits. Then I wish you HF. Have fun. Thus animated, all three immediately jumped into the convertible and sped away, whilst the director turned towards the English. I was already informed that the children would bring a bodyguard and a doctor. Believe me, dear ladies and gentlemen, you will also have fun with us, Österlund explained, and pointed to the lanterns standing at the side of the pumpkin field. We also have the capability to spread artificial darkness across the entire field. These standing dark lights create the American night, as we call it, after an ancient film effect. Black light. No sooner had the last word been spoken than the lanterns spread a gloomy darkness over the entire stretch of land studded with pumpkins. The juicy-looking gourds positively phosphoresced in luminous orange, and in the background, Kepler-42 swelled in the sky with several eruptions, almost like an enormous orange pumpkin. The director praised proudly, "This constructed reality also gives real astronauts the impression of being on a planet without an atmosphere." "Most impressive," Holmes admitted. "Is it true that you run a correctional facility for troubled youth, Mr. Österlund?" "Not in the slightest," he countered with a broad smile and an additional gesture. "We are all merely here to shape destructive adolescents into useful members of our society through tireless and patient instruction, if necessary, with the help of certain medications." "Medications?" Dr. Watson inquired, making sure he had heard correctly. "Yes, and some of the games also serve to discipline the youngsters a bit," the director admitted to him in a quiet tone. "But everything is legally covered. We are absolutely on the right path here, giving the future in the form of our youth a useful impetus for their onward journey through life." In the ghostly scenery of the pitch-black pumpkin field, with its brightly glowing fruits and the alien sun above, which seemed to have turned into a luminous ball like a lantern, 3 astronauts dressed in white now appeared from behind, bouncing through the field towards the front. "What are the suits for if the air mixture is breathable here?" the doctor wanted to know. "It's just a game, and the suits are practically the jerseys for it. Besides, they protect the children's clothes from pumpkin splashes," explained the director, smiling undauntedly whilst casually putting his hands in his suit jacket pockets. It rattled oddly, as if he were playing some sort of patience game with his hands inside them. From the pumpkin field, the announced cries of pain, "Ow! Ouch!" and "Ow!" suddenly reached the ears of the 3 spectators at the field's edge. The wailing drowned out the squelching, splashing sounds caused by the real, ripe pumpkins as they burst. The young astronauts were letting off steam with great energy and fighting spirit. Almost all the real pumpkins exploded when Rocky, Sem and Asunta jumped on them, soon covering their snow-white spacesuits with orange splashes all over. Suddenly, a large bus drove up, from which a plump, red-haired woman in a sky-blue frilly dress jumped out and ran visibly agitated towards the director, her large bosom rising and falling rhythmically. She tugged at his sleeve and panted breathlessly, "Oh, headmaster, something has happened!" Rudely, he pushed her away from himself, causing the master detective to want to call him to order, but then deciding to merely observe the 2 of them instead. The headmaster barely gave the lady a glance whilst muttering, "Do not disturb me, surely this can wait." "As you wish," she whispered, casting an anxious glance at Holmes and Dr. Watson. "The children are having fun," Österlund rejoiced. "That's the most important thing." After the aforementioned children, tired enough from their game, left the field and exhaustedly stumbled rather clumsily towards the headmaster in their puffy spacesuits, they wanted to know their score. Österlund pulled a hand from his jacket pocket and briefly peered at his smart bracelet. Rocky has 838 points, Sem 740, and Assunta 739. A close race for second place. Congratulations, he exclaimed with genuine enthusiasm whilst rubbing his hands. Ah, the bus has already arrived. Right then, please board and let me show you all to your rooms. The children peeled themselves out of their suits, beneath which they wore their expensive designer clothing, and boarded the silver-grey bus where they collapsed, exhausted, into the velvet-red upholstered seats. After the adults had boarded, the bus set off along an avenue lined with beautiful deciduous trees. "Headmaster," implored the lady with folded hands, "please, it is important." "Really now, Mrs. Ursel, you are behaving quite oddly today," he objected, whilst continuing to smile steadily, though he informed Holmes, who was seated beside him. "This is our housekeeper. Dear Ursel, whatever she considers important, I shall first escort the children to their rooms." No sooner said than done. He led the three ministerial offspring after disembarking into a magnificently designed wing of a castle-like estate, showed them, as well as Holmes and Dr. Watson, the comfortably furnished guest rooms, before he finally turned to the still rather agitated Mrs. Ursel and walked up the stairs with her. Holmes could not make out any of the quiet chatter with which she bombarded the headmaster, but he already sensed that something was amiss. "Well then, what do you make of the grinning cat?" asked Rocky, looking from Holmes to Dr. Watson. "His grin is as if stapled on," remarked his brother Sem. "So unnatural, as if he had 64 teeth in his gob." "I believe he'd still be grinning even if someone kicked him in the privates, he, mocked Assunta. "If he even has any." "At least it's a sign of friendliness, but do excuse me. I absolutely must find out why the red-haired lady was trying so frantically to gain his attention," replied Holmes, as he was already moving towards the stairs. "She's probably in love with the old fellow," reckoned Sem. "She must be suffering from a severe lapse in taste," Assunta determined, shaking her head. "Wait, Holmes, I shall accompany you," offered Dr. Watson as he too made his way up the stairs. "I must say, I am also curious about what was so important." 5 minutes later they knew, after entering through a wide open door on the first floor. On the floor of the room lay a gentleman in a fine dark grey suit with a red bloodstain in front of the open window. From the man's chest protruded the blue feathered end of an arrow. Next to him stood Mrs. Ursel and Österlund, united in grief. Outraged, Holmes pointed at the arrow and confronted the director. "Do not tell me now, Mr. Österlund, that some of the games for the youngsters involve bow and arrow." "Yes," he confirmed without hesitation. "What's wrong with that? They don't shoot at each other, but at the notch, those rodents that devour entire stretches of land in droves. They breed like rabbits on the ground, and occasionally make noises that sound like notch, notch, notch. Hence their name. They taste absolutely delicious, like crispy chicken when roasted over a campfire. My mouth is watering just thinking about it." "And my blood is about to boil," Holmes snapped at him. "You are playing with the lives of those entrusted to your care, Mr. Österlund, for an arrow can easily go astray and strike a person, as one can clearly see from the victim, although in this case it was obviously intentional, which I'm sure we can all agree upon." "Yes, it rather looks that way to me too," said Österlund meekly, whilst his smile seemed to vanish even from his broad mouth. He now appeared as if he had lockjaw and couldn't get his lips back together despite considerable effort. "What am I to do? I didn't invent the programme for entertaining my guests. It was put together by qualified psychologists. You can direct your complaints to them. Would you like their addresses, Mr. Holmes?" "No. I want to know who this poor man on the ground is, what activity he performed here, and who might benefit from his death," the detective snapped at him. "What position did he hold at your institute?" "Oh, a very important one. He was our treasurer, Brent Schilling, 49 years old, single and extraordinarily reliable." Österland praised the deceased, whilst his permanent smile reappeared. Such a shame about him. I shall have to place an advertisement in the Union Galactic newspaper later. Well, I would suggest we first try to find out who is responsible for his death, interjected Dr. Watson, who was kneeling beside Schilling and feeling his neck. He is still warm, therefore the shot cannot have been fired long ago. And evidently the arrow shot came through the open window, Holmes stated, casting a glance outside. I reckon the shooter stood directly opposite between the trees. Quickly, we must determine whether he left any useful footprints. Everyone except Mrs. Ursel now ran down the stairs to the spot from where the deadly arrow had evidently been fired. No trace to be seen. It almost seems to me as if the perpetrator smoothed out the soft earth beside the tree with a rake, Holmes noticed. Did Mr. Schilling have any enemies? No, Österland shook his head vigorously. As I said before, he was a reliable man. The doctor rolled his eyes. My dear director, that does not necessarily mean he had no enemies. It could be precisely because of his reliability that he might have turned someone, whoever it may be, against him. I certainly don't know of anyone, Österland insisted, sounding somewhat defiant. Think carefully, Holmes urged him. I must check on those under my protection. He hurriedly ran back into the building, straight to the teenagers' rooms, and found Rocky standing in the corridor, wearing a blue tracksuit with the silver lettering Hazard's End. Rocky, as the eldest, I have an important announcement to make. Holmes took him aside. Someone has been murdered here, the treasurer. Really? Astonishment coupled with genuine interest lit up the boy's face. How did he snuff it then? He was killed with an arrow. Therefore, I advise you to demand immediate passage home, along with the others. A crease of anger formed between the boy's eyebrows, and he exclaimed indignantly, Have you lost your marbles, homie? Now that things are getting really exciting, we're supposed to scarper? Not on your Nelly. And don't even bother asking the others. They want exactly what I want. Action 24/7. This might be a game to you, Rocky, but... A loud click-clack distracted Holmes, and he interrupted himself to see who was causing such noises. The solution to the riddle. Assunta came tottering along in high-heeled boots and grinned. She was wearing a miniskirt and sheer blouse again. I have good news and bad news, she trumpeted. Which would you like to hear first? I believe we already know the bad news, surmised the detective, and bashfully averted his gaze from her. I don't think Arcee would consider the departure of someone she doesn't know as bad news. Come on, baby, let's hear your bad news. I've just been sick, tee-hee, she giggled. And what might the good news be, apart from the fact that you have apparently already recovered? Inquired Holmes, slightly irritated. I've just bought myself new shoes, tee-hee, she revealed, whilst lifting one of her booted feet. Pretty, aren't they? Yes, extraordinarily pretty, though rather impractical on uneven terrain, Miss Assunta. Listen, Rocky, I cannot guarantee your protection under these circumstances, emphasised Holmes, placing his hand on his shoulder. Someone is shooting here with bow and arrow to kill. You should at least discuss this with your father. Oh, the old arse doesn't understand what I need, Rocky ranted, wriggling free from Holmes's grip and sticking out his tongue. Bah! When he actually has time for me, he drowns me in complaints, and I get to pick the reason why. Sometimes, I think it's truly better to die young from space herpes than to grow old and become mentally ossified. Please, if you insist, but remember, I have warned you, fun can very quickly turn into deadly serious business. At that moment, Sem joined them as well. Bloody! Finally, things are getting interesting, he remarked with a mischievous expression. About time the party got started properly round here. Under the girl's transparent blouse, two of her body parts became noticeably rigid. Are you cold, Miss Assunta? Inquired Holmes solicitously, with a very brief glance at that. No, I've fallen hopelessly in love and wish to bewitch you with my erect nipples, homie. Pfft, ha ha ha! All three cheeky rascals burst out laughing whilst the master detective's face turned bright red. Ha ha ha! Rocky could not contain himself. You are an anachronism, homie. As out of place as an astronaut on a nudist beach. Ha ha ha! There's a saying, Sherlock Holmes interjected promptly. He who laughs last, laughs longest. Enraged, he spun around swiftly and hurried back to Dr. Watson and the director. The English wanker's off like greased lightning, eh, chaps? Jested Sem, cackling at his own joke. Where have you been? Inquired the director of Holmes. I'll be completely honest. I recommended that our problem children depart, but they insisted on staying here, he confessed to him. Moreover, they took mischievous pleasure in making fun of me. At this honest response, Oosterlund burst out laughing. Ha ha, for this ADHD lot, it's all one big adventure. The yearning for pleasure and adventure lies in young people's blood, just as does the fear of it, philosophized Dr. Watson. And fear is a protective function. These merciless creatures seemed not to know fear at all, Holmes said irritably, unless they find themselves directly in the eye of danger, just as earlier in the space glider. They are simply impulsive, hyperactive, and ignorant. We were all like that once. We must love them despite their faults and insolence, the headmaster remarked dismissively with a wave of his hand. Wrong, hissed Sherlock Holmes. Their parents must love them, we do not. We only need to watch over them, which is difficult enough. Back to the death. Was there an archery session scheduled for the time of death in question, Mr. Oosterlund? In an affected gesture, the headmaster wiped his brow. Let me think. No, archery is not on the programme again until tomorrow. In the next few minutes, the newcomers are meant to be hunted by those already here with paintball guns. The ancient games are the most popular. How many staff members do you employ at your holiday camp, Mr. Oosterlund? Dr. Watson inquired. Only dear Ursula, the cook Malwina and the treasurer Schilling. Everyone else in the house are robots, who are called ironheads and provide excellent service. And the best thing about them is, they never ask for holiday nor a pay rise and never complain. Hey, hey, come along, gentlemen. Rather reluctantly, Holmes and Dr. Watson followed the eternally grinning headmaster, who led them along a narrow path past the estate to an obstacle course. Ah, there are our protégés, he rejoiced at the sight of a horde of hooded figures dressed in dark clothing, armed with large silver pistols, in whose midst stood Rocky, Sem, and Assunta, wearing white protective suits and yellow plastic goggles. The rules are simple. Our newly arrived candidates get a 2-minute head start and must try not to get hit. And go! A bell rang. The 3 white, bespectacled figures ran off in different directions, and a tinny voice counted backwards from 120. 120, 119, 118. Impatiently, Holmes whispered into the headmaster's ear, What do you intend to do about the murder, Mr. Oosterlund? Well, I shall of course report this unpleasant incident to the Galactic Union. As far as I'm aware, you are a detective by profession. With an appraising look, he examined Sherlock Holmes from head to toe. What could be more fitting than for you to take over the investigation? Nothing like this has ever happened here before. With mounting indignation, Dr. Watson had listened to the headmaster's words and was just about to say something when the bell rang again as the tinny voice reached the number 1, prompting the hooded figures to begin their pursuit with wild war cries. They too scattered in 3 different directions, and when calm had returned to the square, the doctor gave the headmaster a piece of his mind. You are taking this serious matter far too lightly, Mr. Oosterlund. One might think you had merely been informed of an accounting error rather than the brutal murder of one of your employees. Don't you think your holiday camp is facing a veritable crisis because of this? As expected, the headmaster smiled imperturbably and explained in a patronising manner. There was also a crisis in the Neanderthal Valley until the clever one among the hominids cottoned on to making the edges of hand axes sharp rather than round. And as for our cheerful charges, for them, any routine lacking motivation is merely a tedious affair anyway. Holmes could not believe it. Don't tell me you organised the murder for the amusement of the youngsters. Of course not, Österlund dismissed with a gesture. What an amusing notion from you, Mr. Holmes, but I am a thoroughly positive person and, as such, am convinced that we can draw an advantage from everything that happens around us. Good point, replied Holmes. Who could possibly benefit from the unexpected demise of your treasurer? The headmaster pursed his lips before answering. His successor, whoever that may be. After all, this position here on an exoplanet with minimal risk and a constantly changing young population is quite sought after and excellently compensated. Please excuse me now, I must check on the menu in the kitchen. You see, it should be nutritious and flavoursome, so I must taste it personally, just like the cupbearer of the gods once did. Ha ha! Dr. Watson watched him leave, shaking his head. I have never encountered such a man before. My alarm bells are ringing, muttered Holmes. This cold-bloodedness makes him extremely suspicious to me. But he was right next to us at the time of the crime, Dr. Watson reminded him. The lady called Ursel arrived by bus to inform him of the murder. The victim's body was still warm, which means the headmaster could not possibly have fired the shot and covered his tracks before he drove towards us in the open car. Pondered the master detective. Not necessarily. After firing the shot, he could have instructed a robot to cover his tracks before getting into the car and racing off. And by refusing to listen to Mrs. Ursel's message, he would have given the robot enough time for this task. That's also true, Dr. Watson had to admit, but we cannot exclude the possibility that the murderer, whether male or female, could be one of the young people. That's probably right, nodded Holmes. However, I consider that unlikely, since, as treasurer, he would have had hardly any contact with the young rebels. Yes, and a robbery can also be ruled out given the wealthy houses from which the local clientele comes, pondered the doctor. However, money could have something to do with the motive. You say it, my friend, Holmes agreed, which brings us back to the headmaster. I counted 15 young people earlier, plus our 3 protégés, making a grand total of 18 million in revenue. If the headmaster skimmed some of that off for himself and the treasurer noticed it, then… That would have been his death sentence, completed the doctor. So, how shall we proceed? I shall have a word with the young people and then interrogate Mrs. Ursel, and you, my dear Watson, could make your way to the kitchen to interview the cook, suggested Holmes. Excellent idea, the doctor said delightedly. I can sample the food while I'm there. See you later. No sooner had Dr. Watson disappeared than Assunta emerged. Her white suit was splattered all over with red paint. Angrily, she removed her glasses and snapped, Unfair! I should have been given a longer head start. You should have bought better shoes, young lady, Holmes sneered. With those high heels, you were bound to get caught. Hello, I am Riddell, the daughter of the Martian Minister of Defense. Is that a robot who is dressed so strangely? He, Assunta chuckled. Wrong, that's a human from the past, somewhere between the Stone Age and the Renaissance. Not quite, Holmes objected. That lies 200 years behind me. How do you like it here, Miss Riddell? Brilliant. Yesterday, we dismantled a service robot and rebuilt it into a war machine, she recounted, her freckled face beaming. Oh, is he shooting with bow and arrow now? Hoped Holmes, eager to conclude the case quickly. No, only with laser beams, she waved dismissively with her paintball gun. No worries, they are set to the lowest level, and cause nothing worse than a sunburn. Tee-hee-hee! Have you perhaps noticed any disagreements between the organisers, Miss Riddell, the director, the housekeeper, or the treasurer? Holmes probed, whilst acting as disinterested as possible. Muttered Riddell. The director called plump Ursula a lame duck yesterday. But Mrs. Ursula is not plump at all, protested Holmes. I don't care, but he scolded her anyway. Riddell stiffened, before simply running away, closely followed by Assunta. In the spotlessly chrome-plated kitchen, Dr. Watson simultaneously inspected the food in several pots presented to him by the remarkably thin cook. Wearing a black dress with a snow-white apron and a white cap over her blonde hair, she looked rather old-fashioned. He munched contentedly. Delicious, my compliments. By the way, I wanted to ask you if you are satisfied with the working atmosphere here, Mrs. Malwina. Cannot complain, she replied. Only now and then did Mr. Schilling complain that I was too generous with the ingredients. He was of the opinion that for the young guests one needn't serve lordly dishes, as they were ungrateful anyway and easily satisfied with junk food. Nevertheless, I am sorry that he met such a sudden end. How did you find out about that? The doctor wanted to know. Corridor gossip. Our robots always report the news. I naturally asked the Iron Head whether he had seen who had snuffed out poor Schilling's life, but he hadn't seen anything, or someone had deleted that memory from his hard drive. Is that possible? Wondered Dr. Watson. Certainly, either by tampering with the robot's electronics or with a simple remote control, she explained. Looks just like this one here for the kitchen appliances. From her apron pocket, she pulled out a small box, which was only as large as an antique matchbox, with 6 small buttons on it. After pressing several buttons, which caused a clattering sound, some of the kitchen appliances began to work. The mixer rotated in a pot, and the coffee machine spluttered, whilst the dishwasher opened its flap and used 2 extendable gripping arms to place the clean dishes onto a shelf. Brilliant! Dr. Watson paid respect to modern technology. Do teenagers often get up to mischief with it? Hardly, she denied. Last week we had an arsonist amongst them, but his mother, the Minister for Social Affairs from Venus, personally came to collect him. In the dining hall, all 18 holiday guests were now seated, relishing the feast. A small locomotive with many carriages, upon which plates of various dishes were placed, travelled along the long table, and everyone helped themselves to whatever they fancied. Apart from the clatter of cutlery, only occasional murmurs could be heard, and, from time to time, soft giggles. From a balustrade above, the director and Sherlock Holmes observed the feeding. After dinner, we tire them out with an obstacle course, then they usually retreat to bed voluntarily. Österlund grinned. Follow me, Mr. Holmes. Let us also partake in some of these delicacies. Together, they descended the stairs and sat down in the vacant seats. Meanwhile, the dining train cleared away the empty plates from the main course, and a robot in red livery served the desserts. There was vanilla pudding with whipped cream, which was not exactly Holmes's favourite dish, but he helped himself hungrily. I am making every possible effort here to... The director attempted to initiate casual dinner conversation. But Rocky interrupted him. If it's causing you trouble, you should stop and find another job. Approving chuckles from all who had heard it. Österlund froze his smile and cast Rocky a warning glance. A capable man in service of the public recently breathed his last. My heart is breaking and my stomach along with it, tee-hee, giggled Assunta. Well, at least not your legs, joked the director as he stood up. May I then invite you all to the joint obstacle course? You still have time to lace up your running shoes. We'll begin in 15 minutes. An ironhead will lead you to today's course, where many hurdles await to be overcome by you. This shall prepare you for a life full of obstacles, my dears. Reluctantly, the pubescent guests rose and ran to their rooms to adjust their attire accordingly. Just as Holmes wanted to question him, the director excused himself. "You must excuse me now, Mr. Holmes. I must attend to the monetary matters, for until a new treasurer arrives, nothing shall be lost here." With that, he hurried away at a brisk pace. Holmes retired to his room for refreshment before taking a stroll down the avenue. Once again, he examined the spot from which the fatal arrow had been shot, but could not find the slightest telling clue. After the obstacle course, which indeed proved quite exhausting for all participants, calm descended upon the large estate. Everyone was in their rooms. Only Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, equipped with torches, went on the prowl for telling clues about the perpetrator. In the room of the murdered Mr. Schilling, they found only the usual belongings, consisting of a collection of suits in the wardrobe, various toiletries in the bathroom, and several pictures on the walls. One of the photographs showed the deceased arm in arm with Mrs. Ursel. Both were smiling mischievously in the picture. "Oh," remarked Dr. Watson, "that could be a clue to a forbidden romance, for a liaison amongst the staff is never looked upon favourably." "I do not think the director acted out of jealousy," remarked Holmes, taking the picture from the wall. "It could have been a crime of passion," the doctor speculated. "Mrs. Ursel caught her sweetheart with an underage girl and, with a broken heart, repaid his betrayal with an arrow through his own." "Rather melodramatic. I don't believe this woman capable of that. She appeared genuinely shaken when she leapt from the bus to deliver the death notice to the director," Holmes objected, whilst removing the back of the frame. "Nothing. I thought we might find a letter or something. Wait, there is something scribbled on the back of the photograph." Curiously, Dr. Watson also peered at it and tried to decipher the words. That could mean "under the influence of clover" or something similar. "No, that doesn't mean clover. It must be Clee. I cannot make out the rest. At any rate, I'm tired, and my concentration easily wanes when I'm fatigued. Let us surrender ourselves to Morpheus's embrace, Watson." The next morning at breakfast, everyone was seated together at the table once again, this time including Mrs. Ursel and Dr. Watson. The teenagers were messing about, being cheeky with each other and with the director, before they set off for the first game of the day, followed by Mr. Oosterlund. "What game are they playing today?" Dr. Watson asked Mrs. Ursel. "But my dear friend," Holmes replied critically, "we already know that. Have you forgotten that Mr. Oosterlund told us they would be shooting arrows at the notch?" "Ah, yes," the doctor now recalled. "Mrs. Ursel, has there never been an accident here?" "No, not until yesterday." After this statement, she also wanted to leave the table, but Holmes held her back by the sleeve of her eggshell-coloured blouse. "Yesterday wasn't an accident either, but rather a murder," he reminded her sharply. Her face turned chalk white, which barely contrasted with her light-coloured blouse. "Yes, of course. Oh, I am so sorry about poor Mr. Schilling." "You loved him, did you not?" Dr. Watson surmised. "No, one cannot exactly say that," she whispered. "Please excuse me, I must urgently freshen up." After she had positively fled, the gentleman decided to watch the young people's game. On a sprawling meadow stood several fixed targets, whilst between them some of the robots called Ironhead ran back and forth as moving targets in colourful garments. The teenagers stood in a row with their bows at the ready. On their backs they had quivers containing their arrows. "Well then, my dear friends," began the director with a speech. "I'm certainly many things, but most definitely not your friend," Rocky grumbled. "You old rascal," Assunta sneered. I understand why your parents wanted 130 light years between themselves and you," the director announced, and then continued smiling with the game explanation. "First, some bad news. The Animal Protection Society has forbidden further hunts of the notch. Robots will serve as replacements instead. When I shout 'Go!' shoot as many arrows as possible and try to hit the targets or the ironheads. The arrows automatically send your hits to the scoreboard on the large display at the side of the field. At the end, you'll see the evaluation and the rank you've achieved. Ready, steady, go! Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! The arrows flew, hissing through the air, and most of them hit their target. On the board, the names of the archers appeared at short intervals, constantly shifting positions. At times, Rocky was in first place, then a boy named Hunter, then Riddell, and so forth. "That's what I love about these children," the director enthused. "Their indomitable will to win." "I dare say you still have it, Mr. Österlund," Holmes whispered to him. "Yes, I suppose that's true," he admitted. "Unfortunately, no one can match me. I mean, as director, I am naturally first in line here, even though I'm not even playing." After the archery contest ended, the winner was determined. It was Riddell, who received a gold medal on a blue ribbon around her neck from the director. Interestingly, whilst pulling out this medal, a remote control fell from his jacket pocket. Dr. Watson bent down and picked it up unnoticed. "Just look, Holmes. Do you know what this is?" he asked excitedly. "You will surely tell me right away," Holmes surmised. "That is a remote control that can control electrical devices and erase robots' memories on their hard drives. That is the proof that Österlund is the murderer." "No, it is merely proof that he could be the one," the detective corrected him. "There is surely more than one of these devices, is there not?" "That's true," said the doctor sadly. "The cook also owns such a remote control, and surely Mrs. Ursel does as well. Oh, how can we prove he committed this deed? I am convinced you were right with your initial suspicion, dear friend. He shot Mr. Schilling and had one of the iron heads erase the traces." "Patience, Watson. Perhaps he will still make a mistake," Holmes hoped. The next game was called Robot Riding and consisted of a piggyback race with the iron heads. The teenagers were thrilled to be carried over hill and dale by the robots, cheering them on, and after 1 hour there was another awards ceremony. A boy named Willard had won, the nephew of Mercury's Minister of Sport. Time truly flew when spent with amusing sporting events, and soon everyone was seated at the table again, dining on delicious delicacies from the food train for lunch. Before dessert, Director Österlund left the table and went to his office to Skype with several ministers, as he informed Holmes upon his inquiry. Mrs. Ursel also declined pudding and attempted to avoid further questions, but Holmes and Dr. Watson remained hot on her heels. "Has it occurred to you, Mrs. Ursel," Holmes whispered to her, "that it might not stop at one murder?" Frightened, she stopped in her tracks. "What do you mean by that?" "Well, I could imagine that whoever is responsible for Mr. Schilling's death might now have you, his former girlfriend, in their sights." "I really must protest," she said indignantly. "Just because we got on well for a brief time, I was never his mistress, if that's what you were trying to suggest, Mr. Holmes." Without another word, she hurried away in quick, mincing steps towards a concealed door, behind which she disappeared. "Now you've frightened her," Dr. Watson reproached him. "Really, sometimes you can be rather undiplomatic, my dear friend." "Oh dear," Holmes uttered with a roll of his eyes. "I shall have to endure another verbal attack. Here comes Miss Assunta." Little Assunta strode confidently towards him and smiled blissfully. "Did you sleep well last night, Mr. Holmes?" "Well, yes, thank you for asking," he wondered. "I'm so pleased," she whispered sweetly. "I had such a lovely dream." "Aha! Here comes another cheeky remark," Dr. Watson suspected from her. "I dreamt of a knight on a white horse, which I found so romantic," she prattled on whilst running her fingers through the long side of her hairstyle. "Excuse me, gentlemen, I must change now for the next performance." Holmes watched her perplexedly. Whatever has happened to her? From the concealed door, Mrs. Ursel emerged once more and was immediately questioned by Sherlock Holmes. Mrs. Ursel, my ward Assunta has just surprised me with exceptionally good behaviour. This cannot have occurred due to any maturing process that has taken place here. I recall that Director Österlund mentioned medications to me yesterday. Do you know anything more about this? Of course. The most defiant ones receive a harmless medication called Clearatol for their sole acne. That's what we call our clients' rebellious outbursts, the housekeeper explained. Incidentally, this medicine also serves as a truth serum, which is how I already know that Rocky finds you peculiar and our director creepy. Who knows why, but... She left the last sentence unfinished with a shrug of her shoulders. How extraordinarily enlightening, Holmes pondered. And what else do you hear from the young people, Mrs. Ursel? Complaints, I mean. When I hear anything from a teenager, I fundamentally adopt a dismissive attitude, she admitted frankly. They only complain about trivial matters, such as the colour of the clothing we provide them, the selection of items available for purchase here, or the lack of more violent games. May I ask how you managed to get the young people to take this medication voluntarily? Dr. Watson interjected into the conversation. It is secretly mixed into their dessert, Ursel revealed to him candidly. Oh, I also ate one yesterday, interjected Holmes, clutching his mouth in shock. Yesterday there was no medication administered. Today, only a select few received their ration. Do not worry, Mr. Holmes. The robots deliver the prepared desserts to the correct clients. Now, I must check on the children's rooms. From time to time, I find forbidden drugs to confiscate. Please excuse me. Dr. Watson touched his temple. Something has just occurred to me. You remember the scribbles on the photograph, Holmes? I thought it said cloverleaf, but it must have meant under the influence of Clearatol. That means our apparent lovers were only connected under the influence of this medication on the day the photograph was taken. That would definitively eliminate the motive of a crime of passion, Holmes realised. You have become friendly with the cook. How about questioning her about this? When will one of the young guests receive their portion of Clearatol in their dessert? Aha, I understand what you're hinting at, my clever friend, exclaimed Dr. Watson, already hurrying off towards the kitchen. Meanwhile, an argument from the upper floor reached the master detective's attentive ears. I truly do not intend to fight for your friendship, Mrs. Ursel uttered these words. Well, you've already lost the battle against your obesity. You remind me of my maths teacher. She was just as fat, and I found her utterly revolting too. Riddell snapped at her scornfully before strutting away. Just as he was about to go upstairs, Sem approached him with a mournful expression. What's got your goat? Holmes inquired of him. Either I have dreamt my entire life up until now, or I am dreaming now, Sem summarised, seemingly in a bout of self-realisation. Imagine this, homie. I had hidden a bit of ecstasy in my shoes, and it simply vanished into thin air. Bloody hell. I could lie and claim that I'm sorry, Holmes admitted, but I don't think you'd believe me anyway. You're right, Sem agreed and ran outside. From above, Riddell tiptoed down the steps in a fire-red trouser suit. Wisdom that comes with age is distributed as unequally amongst people as beauty is. Tee-hee-hee, she giggled foolishly, whilst her gaze grazed the detective. You look like a robot who has dressed up as a human being, hee-hee. I'll take that as a compliment, he replied curtly. After he refused to be provoked by her, she lost interest and slunk away. Meanwhile, the doctor approached with giant strides. I know everything, he panted, out of breath. This evening, Riddell will receive a dose of Clearatol in her chocolate pudding. Good to know, Holmes rejoiced and instructed his friend. When we are seated at the table, you must distract the director with an amusing anecdote from your life while serving. It must be an exciting one. Consider it done. I believe my wartime experiences shall be captivating enough. The few hours until supper were killed by all holiday guests with an exciting game. On the director's orders, they divided into 2 teams of 9 players each and dug trenches. Then, from these trenches, they had to hit the iron heads with laser pistols as they tried to intrude. A team lost as soon as an iron head managed to jump into their trench. After a lavish meal, the liveried robot served the chocolate pudding. Just as Dr. Watson was telling a very exciting tale about his deployment as a military doctor in the colonies, Sherlock Holmes managed to swap his pudding with Riddell's unnoticed. And when Dr. Watson had finished his story and was receiving admiration from all sides, the cunning detective discreetly exchanged the acquired pudding with that of the director. "Indeed, you have led quite an adventurous life." Österland smacked his lips while spooning up his pudding. "Sometimes my work becomes downright tedious." "I'm certain you'll find ways and means to make it a bit more exciting," remarked Dr. Watson. "Oh yes," Holmes chimed in, patting Österland on the shoulder. "When you hit Mr. Schilling with the arrow, that must have excited you." Nodded Österland, already under the influence of the Clairotol. "He looked at me in utter disbelief from the window. He made a urg sound. Ha-ho!" He suddenly broke off his laughter in shock. "What did I just say?" "The truth, my dear fellow," Holmes enlightened him. "You see, I have slipped you your own medicine, you murderer." Ashamed, the exposed director covered his face whilst whimpering. "The pedant wanted to report me for embezzlement." He, the old fellow looks like a square and committed murder. That impresses me mightily." "Well, I believe these doctored puddings should become mandatory nutrition for our youth," Holmes suggested dryly. You were listening to Pomej, Holiday of Terror, Sherlock Holmes, The Galactic Cases, Episode 11. Based on the characters by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. A Go Audio production